A woman I worked with, she went through her second divorce, got breast cancer at the same time. It was a double whammy. Bad combination of things happening at once. He connected with someone who was a decent guy, good guy, but
I've been preparing for this pretty much the whole week, consuming your content. I have with me today Bernardo Mendez, and he helps wise, professional, and ambitious women find devotional love in record time by fixing root causes, raising standards, and inspiring commitment to attract the right man that they can fall in love with. Obviously, love is simple, but it's not easy to find. I know that from personal experience. But your process, although similar, it gets results in helping women who are ambitious find the love we want. Thank you so much, Bernardo, for joining me today on the Manager's Mic podcast. If I can humbly say, this is an honor for me.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I appreciate you inviting me, and thanks for consuming some of the content. And I'm excited to talk to you and your audience.
Yeah, this is cool. I have a list of questions. And is there anything you wanted to add to your introduction? Because I was also seeing you got a pretty rich history. You started off back in the Tony Robbins days, I saw when I was studying your LinkedIn too. Is there anything you wanted to add to that introduction?
Not much, other than it's really been fulfilling to go on this journey from early in life, the Tony Robbins day when I was 17 till now, where I'm more focused on other aspects of human growth and understanding. Still very grateful that I got a chance to experience those learnings and doing things a different way, in ways that's more intimate and less rah-rah and more heart to heart. That's more fun for me.
No, I love that. That's awesome. So I have some questions here that I've been prepping, did about pretty much a couple of days of research, just writing them as I was consuming your content on YouTube, where you have 227,000 subscribers. Your client testimonials are super impressive. The first question I have for you is, when I was consuming your content, you talk about what is devotional love? How should we feel it early on? And how do we simplify that definition? Because I think it's important to have definitions. Like when I hear devotional love, I'm not a smart guy. Sometimes I have to read some a couple times. What is the definition of that? How do we simplify that?
I would say not having a static definition, but more of my understanding, my humble understanding of it is a combination of heartfelt, something that you feel in your heart, something that you understand intellectually as well, because it's not just someone that you connect with in your heart, but someone who resonates with at a mind level, and someone that in the best of ways transcends the mundane of day-to-day world. And it's a spiritual experience for someone. It doesn't have to be religious, I think, but for me, having a connection with someone where you truly can lift each other up and be there in good times and bad times, and know that the 1 + 1 that you bring to the table equals maybe 5 or 6. There's things that you bring that the other person could not experience on their own, and vice versa. And I'm not saying that you get to have your glass half full and then feel it with the other person. It's a different thing. It's your glass is full, and you connect with somebody whose glass is full as well. And you create some magic, because you're not coming from a place of deficit or lack. There's obviously human needs, and we all want closeness. I mean, most of us want closeness, and we want to feel seen and heard and understood. It's just, you come from a place where there's goodness in your life. You genuinely feel in love with your life, and you can bring that energy to the other person and hopefully create, through the connection of that person to that person, something that goes beyond, almost like these waves that expand in your circle. It could be your children, it could be your friends or your family members, or people, even strangers, who get a glimpse of what you're experiencing and become inspired to do something in their own lives as a result of that. That would be my imperfect definition of that.
Are you cool if I ask challenging questions, just because I'm genuinely curious?
Yeah, please do. I mean, don't ask me easy questions.
You talked about not in a religious sense, and I'm going to share with you something, like a belief I have personally. So I have been married 10 years, but I still believe in dating. Obviously, that's an important aspect to me. But one of the things that I told my wife up front, I've dated people who are not on the same spiritual wavelength. Like, I'm being very frank. I'm Catholic. And I said, if we can't really align on that, and I'm not saying people who can't obviously have different belief systems in that can't make it work. Like, obviously that's out there. But in my experience, that was important to me. And she ended up actually going through the classes on her own. I said, don't do it for me. Do it, for those reasons. Because just so many times I just feel that if you're not aligned in that regard, I feel that's a huge reason why a lot of relationships fail. That's a personal belief of mine. Would you want to
Yeah.
challenge that at all, or do you feel there's some crossover of truth to that? If that's a fair
I think
question.
that the closeness in very important values is very, very important in a relationship. It doesn't necessarily just mean religious or spiritual. It could be something
Okay.
else. It could be health, for example, for some couples. It could be the way you raise children, or the way you engage in the world, or your definition of loyalty, for example. If those shared values are in alignment in some way, then you stand a chance to weather the storms that life throws at you much more easily, or with less pain than if you don't. For some people, it has to be the same religion. For some people, it has to be a belief in God. For some people, it has to be an awareness of something divine. There's not a right for everyone experience. I have clients who they absolutely want to marry a Christian guy, and nothing that I ever share or imply will change that. I have clients who basically gone that route. They've married a Christian guy, and he was Christian, but the resonance wasn't there. So they become more
Mm,
open to someone who has an idea. For example, they want somebody who has a belief in the divine, even if he's a different religion, and they're
okay.
open to that. I think those things can work so long as you understand the underlying value. And also, it's not just a check mark, because the check marks sometimes are just that. There's people who are religious but are mean to other people. And it's like, well, how good is that? I think that there's definitely a sense of that being important. I get to work with people who have maybe searched for a partner for a long, long time. And there's something to be said about having a list of the things that you're going for that is based on values more than based on cosmetics.
Hmm.
And people listening to this might say, "Of course, I want a guy who, or a woman, if it's a male, who is kind and compassionate and who is sincere, and who doesn't want that?" And there's a secret list that people carry within, that they play sometimes unbeknownst to themselves at the same frequency. They want somebody who's really tall, because I mean, they've never really questioned this, but he must be taller than me. Why is that the case? I mean, should it really be that way? And again, I'm
Yeah.
not here to say you should or shouldn't do it, but questioning some of the things that are more cosmetic in nature, and
Okay.
placing the energy on the things that really make a difference in a relationship, is part of the thing that I help my clients do, to tweak those variables so that they can find someone who is their match and not mathematically exit out of the pool. I help my clients to figure out what are the variables that they can play with, so that they don't have too many non-negotiables of the kind that don't really help them. Because if you
Right.
have something, for example, I give the specific example of tall. When somebody in the US says, "I want a guy who's tall," and maybe tall, her definition of tall is 6'2", and that's the first wish she has. She's eliminated 93% of men in that first wish, and she
Hmm.
also has 10 more wishes. You get to a point where if you're willing to be more open on that one, you might be able to find so much more of what you want on the other variables than if you're very, very specific on something that, if you look at longitudinal studies on relationships, has no significance in terms of how successful a relationship will be.
I was looking through a lot of your content where you talk about like root cause and challenges in devotional love. If we change one or three of these things amongst the
Yeah.
masses, and I hate to say this, a man speaking for women, I hope this doesn't come across weird when people hear this, but what are those common challenges that if a lot of ambitious women who want to
Uh,
have a relationship of love could tweak? Because I know change is a scary word, but maybe improves a better word.
yeah.
More women would find love, period, in your experience.
I'll start with something that is uneven between the way men and women are viewed in society. I think that men are much less likely to be scrutinized and to be judged for not having a successful relationship than women are. It's just a double standard. One of the things that we experience in societies. It's not uncommon for someone who's highly successful, who's experienced maybe a lot of growth in her personal life, has beautiful friends, takes good care of herself, to feel the double pressure of, not only is this part of my life in great contrast to the other parts of my life, but I also feel from my family, from people around me, this eyes of judgment of failing in this area of life. So the first thing I would say is understanding that the specifics of what women are going through right now in midlife. I mean, if you're talking between 40 and 64, roughly, I mean, give or take, you could do more than that. We're experiencing certain challenges that have never happened in human history, all put together at once, The first thing is going out of the shame spiral and into there's nothing wrong with me. There might be something that I can change in my approach, my beliefs, or my skill set. That already is a big change because you go from subconsciously feeling I'm a flawed human being to I'm someone who has never been trained in this specific area of life. Why should I have something that is very exquisite and very profound that few people experience because they also unfairly compare themselves to the Instagram couples who share Bali pictures and they don't know that the couple was fighting before and after the picture, but it seems like these curated experiences, they have something I don't. They're comparing themselves to millions of people now on their phone who seemingly have what they want, not fully understanding that most of those relationships are mediocre at best. There's this notion that love is something that is the most natural thing in the world. And I agree, the feeling of love is the experience of depth of union we seek is not natural. It's never happened in human history. It's just the first couple of generations that we actually have a shot of experiencing that but without the actual learning. The first thing I would say is know that there's nothing flawed in you. The system is somehow rigged right now against you. You can do things to overcome it. We can talk more about that. But that's the first step, you know. Second thing I would say is that the same energy that got you this incredible promotion is not going to play out in the same way if you want to connect to a man. Because if what you're used to doing, and I'm not judging you for experiencing this,
Yeah.
if you've had to really have to go hard and make things happen and lead people and twist arms to make sure that things take place in a business or a career, the connection with a guy is a different type of energy. It's going to be much more of a give and take. It's going to be more vulnerability that than the job maybe is training you to do. I work, for example, with
Yeah.
lots of doctors, and one of the things that many doctors are trained on is to not express a lot of emotion. And
True.
sometimes the nature of life and death situations calls for them to really be sharp and not really go into what are they feel like they just have to perform and do surgery. Or so that type of energy is the opposite of what you need when you connect to someone on a date. So
Hmm.
part of the work that I do is help them to recognize the difference and use the all the power to them to be able to use that at work. Just how do you soften a little bit, not opening your heart full blast because that could be hurtful and
Yeah.
scary unnecessarily, but how do you open in stages with slightly more vulnerability that without you forcing things or twisting arms can see who can show up. That's another aspect that makes a big difference in when I help someone to create the results that she wants. Something else that I help them do is to understand their attachment style because that's something that very few people learn when they're growing up and it makes the biggest difference in life. If you don't understand that you tend to go more avoidant or more anxious and you connect with someone, let's say you're in the more anxious camp and you don't get a text message fast enough, you might start feeling unnecessarily anxious and then you might react in a way where you're putting a lot of pressure onto the person and the person starts feeling scared because they feel it's a little too heavy. So working on attachment, working on somebody's regulation of the nervous system, working on skills that allow the person to ask better questions on a date, to get to know someone instead
Hmm.
of what do you do and just basic questions which are okay and needed, but how do you supplement those other questions that get you to really get a glimpse into somebody's love map or heart map. And then from that place, create this reciprocity of vulnerability that sparks something where the guy is much more willing or inspired to start the pursuit.
Yeah.
Most of the women I work with don't love to pursue men. They do it sometimes because they feel like they have to, but they
Oh,
much
really?
rather have somebody show up and ask them on a date than have them be the one who asks the guy on a date. And there's nothing wrong with women doing that. It's
Right.
just most women prefer to be asked on dates. So working on some of those lever points and some of those underlying ideas. I'll say one more that makes a big
Yeah.
difference. I think that a lot of women, because we live in a society that glorifies youth at a sick level.
Hmm.
If they start getting wrinkles or they don't look the same way they used to 10, 15 years ago, their sense of worth is very connected to that image. Just like a man's sense of worth in
Yeah.
this society is very linked to how much are you producing, how much are you making, what's your career. So we have this unfortunate standards. Women tend to value sometimes themselves without their awareness how awesome they are based on how they
Yeah.
look and to figure out a way to help them to express more of their inner radiance and their light which transcends the wrinkles for most relationships. I mean, you can focus on your energy. It's hard to
Yeah.
focus. I mean, you can get surgery, you can get Botox, but that has limitations.
Yeah.
There's no limitations on your energy and your light, and that's something that's much more worthy of time investment, in my view, if you want to create a relationship that lasts.
I love all that. I have some follow up to some of those responses because I'm just genuinely curious. I've been married 10 years and it's a working progress. I think one of the things I
Mm.
heard a long time ago, he said, if you're in love with someone, you'll never have to weigh your options. And even as you were explaining, as a woman who likes to be pursued, I was thinking in my head, I like to be pursued. Maybe I'm more.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I get, and it doesn't make you weird or wrong or gay. Or it's just that you like that validation.
I still struggle to this day. I'm only married 10 years. I'll just tell you this, and you're well. I can invite you to coach me. I know your client base is typically women, but if you have thoughts
Yeah,
on this, I'm an open book.
for
I
sure.
do. I do struggle with jealousy issues, even after 10 years.
Hmm.
And this is going to sound so petty, but I'll just be real. So, for example, if she watches you ever heard that show Outlander or know of it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
It's a good
Who
show.
hasn't?
I feel like people like that show because of the Jamie guy. She watches it. I make little sarcastic jokes. Oh, I have to watch Cassandra Corn, how she falls in love with some. I make something up. I'm just an
Sure.
idiot sometimes. But I don't want to be jealous. I just want to be clear. I know those are insecurities I work through. You have
Hmm.
any thoughts on that? Like, and I'm okay if you can say, hey, that's immature. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. I just want to get better. Do you have any thoughts on that? Why that might be the case even after 10 years in our relationship?
Yeah, for sure.
Or what are your perspective on what I just said?
First thing I'll say is that you have to be a very courageous human being to, in a podcast that's yours, share that about yourself. So I'll give you kudos for that already. I mean, put you in the smaller percentage of people who are conscious enough, and not just to, I don't know, a secret closet talk about this, but there's people who know you, who watch you, who are going to be, including perhaps your wife, which probably going to be proud of you for asking this question, raising your hand, asking for help. That's already there's a poet, is my favorite poet, David White, and there's a little saying he has in one of, it's a prose piece, it's not a poem, and he talks about the moment you're able to utter the exact dimensionality of your exile, you're already on your way home. Defining
Mm,
the problem is already part of it. What I'll say next is that it's a human thing to experience jealousy, and it's something that typically happens at that level. I have to imagine if that's the ramification, then the ramification of her saying, "Hey, I have a, I'm going to go have lunch with my friend, and the friend is a man," that probably would elicit some similar sense, especially if the man is attractive. That
yeah.
might elicit even more than just watching. You see, you're smiling, so maybe that. So
Yeah.
I would say that I think that there's two elements here. The first one has nothing to do with the other person; it's everything to do with how you understand basically what it is that you bring to the table, and what your sense of what your uniqueness is, because she's with you for a reason. She's
Yeah.
with you because and it's not just because of your amazing physique. It's because she likes your heart. It's because you're creating a family together, or she enjoys basically your way of thinking, even your devotion. There's
Mhm.
aspects of that relationship that are unique, but that doesn't mean that you as a human being can fully understand that at any given moment and feel no sense of there's something missing. So
Right.
sometimes when we are, and this happens typically early in life. Early in life, we learn certain things from the way our caretakers teach us, by what they do, but what they don't do, by how they connect with us. But it's possible, I'm not saying for sure, it's possible that there's something there that at some point in your life experience created a little bit of insecurity, and maybe hasn't been dealt with since then. When you see
Mhm.
her connect and see her eyes show up in light, and there's a little bit of spark or smile in her, you're like, but she produces that and not me. There's something missing. So
Yeah.
I think that the, the part of this is learning how to really connect with the deepest part of you, that is both very unique and different. And also, how do you help that inner child? Because it's not you. You're a grown man and you're a
Right.
successful human being and you do cool things in life, but there's a part of you that's not fully developed, the inner child. Maybe
Okay.
stuck at 5 years of age when mom didn't give you attention or dad didn't give you, so something happened. And it's really important for you to recognize, is this really me, or is there a part of me that right now needs some reassurance? And if
I
so,
like that.
what is that part of me? And how can me adult, have a conversation with my inner child and let him know that even though he feels insecure, that I'm going to take care of him. And in the worst of cases, imagine the worst of cases, the wife actually meets the actor, falls in love with the actor, and leaves you for him. That's the worst unimaginable
Yeah.
story that it's not going to happen, but your mind can take you all that way. That
Yeah.
even in those cases, if that were to happen, that you have something so powerful and so beautiful that you'd be able to, not for fun, but just be able to create that relationship again with someone else who really values you and
Mm,
who's willing to stick through thick and thin. Having those conversations helps. Being
mm.
aware of it, helps. When your natural reaction in that moment is to say, "Hey, that sarcastic comment," what if instead of that, you basically tell yourself, I'm starting to feel insecure right now, and I'm
Okay.
wondering what that's about, or I'm wondering what part of me feels insecure, or what would I need to, if my inner child is feeling this, what could I say to that child that would reassure him that it's okay to feel this way and that she's not going to leave me for that actor. If you do that way, or you can even say, "Hey, right now," without even saying you have to do something about it. "I'm starting to feel a little insecure right now, and I don't want you to change this. I just
Right.
want you to hold space for me feeling this way." In that moment, energy might shift, or you might even go one word and say, "Can you remind me?" And you don't have to do it every time, but every now and then, "Can you remind me why you're with me?" And then
Mm.
you know what? You get to experience it, and then the adult part of you gets to coach the tiny part of you, and then guess, instead of a joke that landed for the 10th time, like, it's not that you feel better afterwards, probably you feel worse, but you get a little bit more of what you want. Give yourself as much as you can on your own,
Yeah.
but also be willing to ask for what you want and need from your partner in a way that is humble. It's a humble ask. "I know you don't have to do this, and I know it's my responsibility." It would still mean the world to me if you were to say, "Why you find me attractive?" Or, "What do you find most attractive about me?" Like, that would start shifting the
Hmm.
narrative to the point where at some point your nervous system will understand, "You know what? I'm cool. I don't have to fear this."
Wow. I feel like I owe you money. That was good stuff.
Think that the people who are listening to this, because it's not just men, women feel jealous as well, and sometimes
Yeah.
for a good reason. I mean, there's going to be times that your nervous system says something. Maybe you sit down at a restaurant. There's a difference between doing that and maybe the waiter comes along and he's this super strong masculine dude and he's flirting with her and she's flirting back. I understand that's a little bit different, right? Then, but
Right.
you can have a conversation about that. Say, "Hey, I totally understand he's an attractive guy. I don't love when that energetic thing happens. Tell me more about it. Be curious. What's showing?" And then it's not even saying you're doing this wrong or you're doing this to me. It's like, what's showing up for you? And maybe that, "Oh, you
Right.
know what? Like, that's not cool. I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt you."
I interpret it to ask those key questions to really crack the inner child so you can pull those boundaries out faster to, I don't know if avoid a fight is the right term, but
Uh,
reframe to have a better result, I guess is what goes through my head. Is that
yeah.
how, am I getting that right or am I missing the mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. And the other
Yeah.
part is being willing to be vulnerable enough to say, not passive aggressively, "I'm upset." No, I'm owning this right now. Here's what I'm experiencing, and let me sit through it. Or, "Is there anything you can help me with right now at this moment as I retrain myself to feel more secure in myself? Is there anything you can help me with? And if so, I'm all ears." So that it requires a lot more courage to go that route, and I
Right.
think you don't have to do it too many times to just get it. But something cool would be, if you haven't done this already, and I didn't until later in life, develop a relationship with that younger part of yourself. And I'm talking literally
Mm,
having conversations. Now, imagine that you're talking to that child. You wouldn't talk to that child the same way you talk to me, or I mean, you would talk to that child differently. Who is that child that needs this reassurance? And what words would you use, not for your adult self, but your child self? And how can you get some feedback, so that you can slowly reaffirm this sense of, "I'm good"? And also, is there an opportunity right now? Is there anything in your life that you see as an opportunity to work on yourself, that you could
mm.
feel that sense of whatever that is? It could be a new skill, it could be exercise, it could be anything that helps you feel even more grounded in yourself. Just start pursuing that.
I love that. This is all good stuff. I want to go back to talking to that one woman, if I may. And I feel
Sure.
like, because I know it's your specialty, and I am encouraging people, you have to check out Bernardo's YouTube channel. It's filled with so much crazy free content. And if you find it valuable, definitely go on his website and go a step further. Well, one of the questions I wrote was, how does a woman,
Uh-huh.
and this probably doesn't pertain to my wife, but I have met a lot of like corporate professional women who have
Sure.
shared with me securities. I'll give you an exaggerated example. A woman was on the phone once with a guy, and she was working in like, an electrical business. And the guy goes, she goes, "I'll be at your house, whatever, to do a home assessment." And he goes, "Well, wait, you're doing it? You're a woman." how can you do electrical work? She had that experience. And I'm giving you
Yeah.
that exaggerated example
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
to give you this next question. How does a woman, because I agree with you earlier, imposter syndrome, the systems against them. I totally agree with all that. And I can't relate to it, obviously, but I agree with
Yeah.
it.
Sure.
How does a woman raise her standards without the feeling of they're putting themselves in a box? And what do women often misread about men that prevent them from being able to commit?
I experience more frequently than not, and I'm not saying that that's the case in society. I experience more frequently than not women who connect with someone, they like him, and the guy's not committing. I do
Right.
have sometimes the experience of helping a client who is really unable to commit. And let's talk about that specific because I think that's the
Yeah.
angle of the question. I think that there's two reasons for that. One would be where someone has had typically a painful experience, whether it's childhood or in relationships that equate relationship commitment to being suffocated in some way.
Right.
So, how do you help someone? The angle there would be how do you help someone to rewire the way they experience relationships so that they know that it's not just that thing that's going to remove freedom from them. Similar to what many guys experience. I don't want to commit. There's so many options for me. I think that's
Yeah.
something that's more commonly heard in men, but definitely nowadays women go through this as well. There's also the experience of the person unwilling to commit because they see that there's some red flags that even though they love the guy, they don't see the guy showing up or stepping up the way he needs to. And that's a different challenge because that's where
Yeah.
instead of me helping her to soften her heart and rewire the way she feels commitment is helping her invite the guy gently and firmly to step up and then
Hmm.
see if the guy is willing to do that again, not for her, but for him and for the relationship. And sometimes the result is powerful. Sometimes the result is let's move on.
Hmm.
That's why when I coach clients, there's going to be a fine balance between interrogating someone, which feels horrible for any person that's on the other side of the interrogation, and being
Right.
so fun and lighthearted that you don't ask serious questions. And by the 10th date, you find something you could have found out before the first date that wasted maybe 3 months of time. How do you ask
Right.
the right questions when you connect with someone so that you can gauge where the man is at, including the type of relationship he's seeking, so that you don't find yourself in a place where you connect to the guy, you really like him, he really likes you, but then when it comes time to commit, the answer is I don't think I can do this because it's emotional suicide. I see that this guy has this
Oh,
problem, he's not doing anything about it, and I don't want to be the mother. I don't want to be the therapist. Unless this changes, it's going to be really hard for me. So I think there's two scenarios that are very common in my work. One, where the woman has some attachment issues that make her
hmm.
put her more into the avoidant side of things, and the other one where she's not in an avoidant state, but she's experiencing someone for specific real reasons that she's holding back on the commitment piece and also doesn't know when to set the boundary if I've done enough and I need to move on from this relationship to something else.
I agree. I have struggled a lot with wanting to give you an example. I think this is going to connect to what you're saying, but I was really engaging. And one of the questions that came top of mind that is not on my list was there's a responsibility for the man too in this. My wife wanted kids. I'm very happy with my kids. I just want to be clear.
Mm. Yeah,
I was afraid to have kids
for
10
sure,
years
man.
ago,
It's a scary
and we
thing.
have it's very scary. For anybody who has kids, it is a very rewarding thing. There's nothing like it, obviously. But at the time when we had first got it, we were in our probably I was in my late 20s, 30s area, and I remember that she wanted to have kids.
Mm.
You ever seen there's an old movie, My Cousin Vinny with Marissa Tomei.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah,
there's
it's a great
that
movie.
scene where she hits the foot down. My biological clock is ticking. She just stomps her foot. It was a lighter version of that. And
Yeah.
obviously I submitted because for me, I knew this was who I wanted to be with for the rest of my life. And I didn't have kids not to lose her. I just want to be clear because that sounds
Yeah, I
terrible.
get it.
But I knew that there wasn't someone else, but there's a responsibility of the man and the relationship. And I'm okay having that conversation to say men also need to do this to be better to women. Is there
Oh, for
any
sure.
thoughts you have on that? And I'm
I mean,
guilty. I have
I have many thoughts on
insecurities.
that.
And you don't have to answer it. I just
No, I mean, I have many
yeah.
thoughts. I mean, part of the work that I do is help women to counterbalance the many guys who do not show up in the way they need to in intimacy. How do you find that needle in the haystack type of experience for real? I mean, there's right now from a systemic perspective, there are fewer men showing up the way women want to.
Why?
I mean, there's more women who want awesome men than men showing up awesomely for women. I'll say that. And there's lots of statistics I have to balance that out,
Yeah.
including, I mean, just to give you something just as basic as if you're a woman in the United States and you're in midlife, you're 40 to 64, and you have a college degree and you make median income, I'm not talking multimillionaire, there's going to be 10 women for 6 men. That's the beginning
Really?
of 30 data points. I have some thoughts on there's definitely a strong need for men to show up courageously and to show up with an open heart in relationships. And I think that men who show up that way, because they're not the majority of men, end up
Right.
getting connected to someone who's pretty amazing in her own right. I think that I'm with you. I think that I don't coach men, but I coach men indirectly in the sense that I'm
Right.
connecting with a woman and the guy basically first day says, "Hey, let's have sex." And the woman coached by me says, "No, thanks. And
Right.
here's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Great if you want to, and if not, I'm sorry. I mean, I think you're really cute, but I'm not going to have sex." What happens? The guy has to either step up or step down. He steps up, he becomes a stronger man. Why? Because now he's delaying gratification. He's going for something that's more meaningful than just a pleasure of the senses. And if he can manage to create that emotional connection with her, it's not just she who benefits because it's less of a challenge for her or maybe less risky for her. He
Right.
becomes basically more, there's more skin in the game. There's less BS, there's less disposable experience. It's a meaningful experience for both humans. I would say that if I would share for your male audience who is single right
Yeah.
now, tip would be put yourself in the shoes of a woman who has
Mm.
so much more to lose by going on a date with you than you do going on a date with her. From the risk of rape to, I mean, not saying that you're
Yeah.
a rapist, but I mean,
No, I'm
that's the
with you.
risk that
I
she's facing,
understand.
to
Yeah,
the
I'm with
risk of
you.
physical harm, to the, I mean, so many other challenges. If you can just see it from that perspective, and that
Right.
doesn't mean that you don't have needs or express them. Imagine that you have a daughter and a guy's dating your daughter. How would you want this guy to treat your daughter? I mean, and can be that guy for the woman that you're dating. I think that would change a lot of things. So if you look at it from that angle and then also understand that it's not just give, it's also, I mean, take. When
Right.
you show up that way, then there's a way for you to ask for what you want that's going to be much more easily met with a yes or a maybe than if your ask is typically something physical. And that's one of the challenges I see. A lot of women who are
Hmm.
successful, beautiful, and they get connect with guys before anything of depth has happened. They want to make out or have sex. If you can get past your own instincts right now and say, "Hey, I'm
Right.
going to invest for something that's going to be far more meaningful with the right person," then you can get a lot more for yourself. And I think something powerful as well is there's nothing wrong with raising your hand asking for help. I think
Yeah.
that you see this. I mean, I think that there's more women asking for help than men. I know statistically, at least in
Yeah.
therapy. I mean, in coaching, I think the statistics are pretty similar, but in therapy, there's a 15% gap between women who need help asking for help and men who need help asking for help.
Yeah.
So if you're one of those guys who hasn't found what you want and you're willing to raise your hand, like what you did earlier, say, "Hey, man, I don't know this." Like, you can get help and you can do things that accelerate your process of getting what you want by in years. You know, like you can get that in months instead of years.
Oh, this is a really good conversation. I really like this. And I like that you said all that stuff about the importance of date related. I do have a daughter and I haven't had the talk yet. So when I have the talk, I'm just going to put you on play and walk out of the room. So, no, I'm just kidding. What is one of your favorite success stories you had of all your clients? You don't have to name names. I'm just curious if there's one that kind of stands out right now that you're like, this was a really cool success story I had that maybe we can kind of highlight.
Yeah, there's a woman I worked with who became a widow at the age of 30 or somewhere around that because
Oh,
the guy
wow.
went to Iraq and you get the knock on the door with a flag and
Oh,
someone
wow.
saying, "Hey, he's gone." And then that's the love of her life. Best friends, lovers, I mean, incredible relationship, really
Yeah.
something deep, not just a husband that's like, no, no, it's like a real relationship that's very profound. And her, in some subconscious way, interpreting, finding that love again in her life is betraying him, not consciously, but that's the way she experienced it. And helping
Yeah.
her to understand that the love that she experienced is the beacon that's going to help her find this new love, and that this essence and this force of this soul is going to be part of it, and it's going to be added to, not removed from. And
Hmm.
it was one session thing where she got it. We worked together for longer than that, but it was
Right.
1 hour and a half conversation where her light came back into her eyes And the next morning, something really powerful happened for her, which is somebody stopped her at Whole Foods to say, "You're so radiant and beautiful." That never happened to her before. In
Really?
a grocery store, somebody stopping her to say that. She didn't add Botox to her face or change her weight or add new clothes or miniskirt. I know that was just her energy being more open and letting go of that. And then a month later, a friend that she'd been connecting with, I mean, for many years, the guy saw a difference in her, the way she showed up, the energy I won so much more than friendship. And she gave it a go. And they've been married for, I don't know, maybe 10 years now, 11 years.
Really?
They live in Hawaii. They have two children, and
Wow.
all started from someone who was willing to say, I'm willing to risk getting my heart broken again, but I don't want to be single for the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
she found it again. And that's one example. Another example on the other end of the spectrum is a woman I worked with recently. I mean, the last couple of years, that she went through her second divorce, got breast cancer at the same
Oh,
time. It was
oh
a
my
double whammy.
goodness.
No, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. She went through a divorce and faced breast cancer for the second time. So it was
Oh,
like a really
man.
bad combination of things happening at once. She connected with someone who was a decent guy, good guy, but not the guy she really was meant to be with. And then
Right.
that overextended its welcome. It was not a great relationship, but she couldn't get out of it. So we started working together. She was able to let go of that person. She was 65. She was like, what do I do now? She
Hmm.
was able to find someone because she rides bikes and it was organic. It wasn't even on apps. Incredible guy, younger, maybe I think a few years younger than her. And they've been so happy. They've been together for a year. She has a promise ring. I'm not sure if they'll get married or not, but there's a commitment to stay together. And she said to me, I feel like I'm just beginning. And there's so many women at that age who just
Hmm.
give up. And I understand why. I'm not blaming them or criticizing them, but the knowing that there's a rebirth that can happen at any stage of your life when you're willing to do something different is always, as much as I've seen it hundreds of times, it's mind blowing to me. And it's one of the things that keeps me going because there's no amount of money that can replace that experience of helping someone to have the most meaningful thing that you'll take out of this lifetime, which is love.
What was the moment in your career that you said to yourself, if I may, and if I missed this on your YouTube content, I
No, that's
totally
okay.
apologize
That's okay.
because this is a
You
very
missed it on my YouTubes? How dare you?
I know. Nah, there's a lot of there's 900 videos, so, but a little over.
Yeah.
But what was the moment for you where you were, this is what I want to do. I want to find this niche and help them.
Oh,
Was there something that happened that you were
it's
just like,
something for sure. And I was talking with this friend recently about it. I was talking to my friend Sally many, many years ago about this whole thing that I wanted to do. My YouTube channel had started, but it was more generic in terms of help. It was
hmm,
more of multiple different areas because the thing I trained in before doing this was not just how to help someone in intimacy, how to help someone who's maybe feeling life has lost meaning, or maybe someone who is experiencing problems with their weight. I mean, it was more of
okay,
a broader life coaching skills scope at that point. And she said, you need to do this with women who need love. I mean, she was going through a basically heartbreak at that moment. And there was something about that conversation where I saw for a brief moment the shame she was experiencing in her heart
hmm,
from having this experience that she couldn't get out of. And that just rubbed me the wrong way, or in the best of ways, to say, you know what, it's done. Like, I'm going to do this. And then I went from being maybe shy about reaching out to people saying, do you need help, to, I mean, messaging. I think that was the first serious push I had for my business. I messaged probably
hmm,
100 people one on one saying, does someone you know need this type of coaching? Because I'm here to help. And before connecting with her, my whole thing was, maybe I'm making them uncomfortable. They're going to feel like I'm sad. And at that point, I said, I don't care. I mean, I'd
yeah,
rather get them uncomfortable than have somebody else experiencing that. I don't want that experience. By the way, I'd also experienced multiple rejections in my life earlier in
yeah.
life that made me really resonant with that feeling of not being seen, not being loved. I think two and two together, I just said, okay, it's done deal. And then from then on, that's been my only focus.
That's incredible. One of the things I think I think I need to even grow up. I wish I'd grown up sooner about this is that you got to remember, and this is just me talking out loud to you, if I may, like rejection is just a moment in time. It's not
Mhm.
forever, number one. And I think number two, the responsibility of men is it's our responsibility to ensure our women or woman, for my case, one woman, is
Yeah.
really put on a pedestal and propped up. I feel like a lot of men have forgotten that the importance of monogamy, the importance of just one forever. And some people will disagree with me, and I don't really care. But
Mm.
that's just my belief system on it.
I'm a firm proponent that monogamy is something really powerful and beautiful. I know it's not for everyone. It is for me.
Right.
The only part that I would say I'm more open to, because sometimes it doesn't work that way, is that you could say forever after. And what if it's not forever after? You should
Right.
still go for what you want instead of maybe saying, "Oh, it just didn't work out." I think that sometimes it doesn't work
Mm,
out for a reason, and it's sometimes for the best reason. So you can
right.
extend it as much as you want, so long as it's serving both human beings. Because sometimes I also see the example of somebody staying there and both people are miserable, but they're together. Oh, and what's
That's
the point
true.
of that? What's the point of having a connection with
Yeah.
someone who's by now different from the way you were maybe 30 years ago or 20 years ago, whenever you first got connected, and
Right.
making each other's lives miserable as a result of just saying, we have to do this. Of course, there's the working through things and putting effort and energy and even counseling if need be. And at
Right.
some point, there's a point of diminishing returns. And if you reach that
Mm,
point, that I mean, what I say is the lesser of two is to maybe exit that relationship. It's not
right.
good. It's just not as bad as staying with someone for the reasons of maybe just for the children, and the children are learning
Mm,
how to tolerate each other instead of how to love each other. There's so much that can be done, though. I mean, there's so much that can be done in a relationship to work on yourself. She works on herself. You work with a counselor, but
right.
even in that situation, sometimes there's just a mismatch in values, and then at that point, I'd still suggest monogamy for someone if that's what calls them to do, even if it's with a different person.
Where can people
Sure,
find you, and what do you have going on that people can maybe go on your website? What will they gain if they join your newsletter, etc.? Can we speak to that a little so people can easily
for
find
sure,
you and leverage this to find love that they want,
for
especially
sure.
ambitious women?
The easiest way to find me is through my website. You can go to bernmendez.com. That's BERNMENDEZ.com. And from that website, you have a link to my YouTube channel, to my Instagram. YouTube, I have a lot of videos. There's a quiz you can take that will show you your top attraction blind spot in 60 seconds or so. So you can do all those things from that main hub. And yeah, well, I mean, if somebody also wants to evaluate and see if we can work together, there's a link there that where you can book a call, and I'll read the application. If I can help you, then we'll talk, and then we'll decide, hey, is this something that can help you? And if so, then we can work together. If not, then you'll still come out with a greater degree of understanding of what's preventing you. One of the things I love to do when I talk to someone is, at least from my perspective, sure, here's what I see that's going on right now that you may not be seeing, so that we work together or not is less. It's not the thing is, here's the thing I would focus on if I were in your shoes right now to make a big shift. Sometimes somebody will come to my call and they'll say, "Hi," something along the lines of, "I don't think I'm too feminine," and that's not the thing at all. Maybe the thing that's going on is there's a fear of abandonment in some way, and that's really the thing
Right.
that's preventing her from having a set of eyes outside of the cereal box. You can read the label from the inside. Is very, very
Right.
helpful to not try to reinvent the wheel and run around in circles.
What I'm going to also do as additional benefit is on the Manager's Mic website, I can feature episodes for people list. I'll put yours on there completely free for the next over 30 days because I firmly believe that you got to get this part of your life right. And my wife and I discussed this too, and I'm aligned with you. I'm aligned with her 100%. I want to drive attention to that because I think you got to get this personal framework and everything right so you can have a thriving professional career, which is why I was excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I would say this, because somebody may be listening to us right now and say, well, I don't want a relationship. And that's totally fair. You don't have to go for a relationship in life. And I'm
Right.
all for someone who willingly and consciously chooses to stay single forever. That doesn't make them less
Right.
than someone who chooses to go for partnership. I would just say I connect with a lot of people that they've chosen that not because they want to, but because they think that there's no way out. And my whole predicament of figuring out what's really not working for women right now is not to say, ladies, we're screwed, but to say, despite the fact that these things are working this way, guess what? I've honed this process, even though this is challenging. Here's how we can go around it. And that's really what my focus is. There's many, many challenges, but there's workarounds for those challenges. Is it easy?
Right.
Absolutely not. Anyone who sells you the idea that it's easy is full of it, but it's still possible. And that's the difference between easy, no, impossible, no. It's possible if you follow certain pathways that can get. And I'm not saying my pathway is the only one. There's many different coaches who share some of this. Mine is specific in the sense that I combine a few things. neuroscience and trauma informed approach, and also
Yeah.
the reality was showing up on the ground in a very thorough way that most people don't haven't had the time to research. The combination of all those things makes it a really compelling situation for those people that I'm privileged enough to work with. It's not something that everybody can do,
Yeah.
but it's a life changing thing for the most part.
Yeah, I was on a flight once and everybody was going to Disney when the economy crashed. People will invest when they're ready. I do have a final question. Undoubtedly, there's some people, there's going to be that one person, well, you kind of hinted this already, who may not be ready to take the quiz
Yeah,
on your website, bernmendez.com, who feels it's hopeless, who feels that everything is against them. And I'll share this with you. I love my mom very much, and Trisha, my wife, loves her mom very much. And one of the things we connected on is that they both never remarried, single mom backgrounds, and
yeah,
they're great moms. They just never decided to do that. And we theorize why. I'm not talking bad about my mom or her mom. I just want to be very transparent with you.
yeah.
But I want to frame it from this lens for that woman who feels that no, love is not for me. What would you say to that person? That even if they don't take the step, you
Sure.
do deserve love.
First thing I'll say is I understand. If you're experiencing that it's not for me, who am I to judge basically if it is or it isn't? I have to assume that you've gone through your fair share of emotional pain, even physical pain perhaps as well, that puts you in a position where that's not something you want anymore. That's the first thing I'll say. Second thing I'll say, if there's a part of you that's still maybe somewhat hopeful, it's not a complete darkness, but there's a little bit of a candle in that cave that says, oh, if only I could find this. It's impossible, but if I could find it, it'd be great. Ask yourself the question, if I didn't have to go for what I think I can get, but if I went for what my heart really longs for, what would I go for? And if the answer is nothing, then that's your answer. If your answer is no, if I really could get, if my magic wand could deliver the experience you want, would you really say nothing? Or would you say, no, I want this, but I don't think it's possible? That's the beginning. Go for what you absolutely want or dream about what that is, that the strength of that pulls you into finding answers. And the answers might be nothing to do with me, it might be trauma work with a counselor, or it might be a church thing, or it might be ayahuasca in the middle of the jungle. I don't know what it is. If the why is strong enough, you will find the how.